we're going to move on to a segment that's going to happen every once in a while. And this particular segment is where Pete is going to introduce himself. Pete is going to be another recurring member of our Wolflair team. He was born in Greece. He grew up mostly in the United States. He thinks in English, considers himself an American. He is back, though, in the islands of Greece. He's on a mythical island, and wait till you hear about it. It's fascinating. People live forever, or seem to. And there's all kinds of mythology there. I want you to listen in because this is a very incredible place where a lot of history has happened. And Pete is a very soft-spoken. He's a great author, a wonderful blogger. He's got 5 websites. He's going to tell you about them. I'd like you to visit them all. He challenges you with his websites because he makes you think. And he comes up with provocative ideas. And I said he's fun as well. When he tells you this story, when you listen the next half hour, you're going to hear things that has happened in his life. Everything from a near-death experience to his current book that he's working on about Hitler doubles, which is fascinating. A lot more interesting. I mean, you wouldn't believe what really went on. There was just so much things out there. So I'm going to leave it to Pete to introduce himself, and everybody's going to be doing that in the next couple weeks. And we thank you for listening, and we'd like a lot of feedback. Pete is also on Facebook, as well as every member of our team. And we welcome feedback. We welcome your friendships. We welcome followers, and we'll follow you in exchange. And don't hesitate to contribute, to ask questions. And as soon as possible, we will have the interactive shows where we have call-in. So I will leave it at that and let you listen to Pete's fascinating tale from the Greek Isles.
Hello, my name is Peter Fotis Kapnistos. I was born in Athens, Greece, but I moved to the United States when I was around 3 years old, and I grew up in Ohio, near the Great Lakes area, near Cleveland, in a small town named Warren, Ohio. And I consider myself to be more American than anything else. It's my first language. I think in English. After high school, though, I went to Greece again for a holiday one summer, and I liked it. And I enrolled in a university in Athens, and I ended up staying in Greece. I did return to the States a few times, but in the end, I fell in love with the beauty of the Mediterranean and the way of life there, so I came back here. I've worked basically as a photographer, a journalist, and a newspaper editor. I was the editor of the Athens News. It was the only daily newspaper in English that circulated in Greece. It doesn't exist anymore. And I also got involved with the internet. I opened a few internet cafes on some of the Greek islands. Now I'm also on a Greek island. I live on an island called Ikaria. You may have heard of it. It's considered a blue zone, which means that people there live to be over 90 years old. And a lot of scientists have come here and studied, try to find out what the secret is, what makes people live so long here. I think it's basically the fact that there's no stress. The life is simple, and people don't even lock their doors at night here. Ikaria is right next to Patmos. Patmos, you may know, is the island where St. John wrote the Apocalypse, the Revelation. And I'm a big fan of the Revelation. For many reasons, because I like mythology, I like literature, and I like to dream. I have a website which is myth-os.com, where I cover a lot of topics that have to do with mythology, the classics, and a lot of the unexplained, like UFOs and parapsychology and things like this. Now, through my life, I've had 3 experiences that really stand out that I think are worth mentioning. And this is what I'd like to talk about now. The first experience occurred when I was a teenager. This was back in Ohio. It was around 1967, 1968. And I had what is called a near-death experience, or an out-of-the-body experience. And I can tell you that it's exactly how they describe it. It's not a hallucination similar to LSD or magic mushroom or anything like that. This is far more intense. It's something that it's like those dreams that you sometimes think are more real than reality. Yeah, it seems that from what I experienced, it seems that the consciousness is not restricted to within the human body or the brain or the nervous system. Of course, it sounds crazy according to what we've been taught. But when you really think about it, okay, the human brain, what is it? It's a bundle of cells, organic, and it's small enough to fit into a bucket of water. Now, this object in a bucket of water can contain consciousness, yes? But then the entire universe has everything it needs. It has all the chemistry required. It has all the electricity, all the connections, and it's a lot larger than something that can fit into a bucket of water. So I tend to think that consciousness is something that's more or less built into the fabric of space and time. But it requires life, of course. You know, living things are conscious. You can't expect rocks and minerals to be conscious. Nowadays, we're beginning to understand that biology is a lot greater than we had previously thought, especially exobiology or astrobiology. And I personally believe that life is everywhere. Microorganisms are everywhere. Not only on Earth, but on the planets that we're discovering almost every day that are capable of supporting life or that maybe have water. And I think that there's a tremendous network of microorganisms that stretches throughout the entire universe. And these organisms actually communicate with each other. And this is how the universe can be conscious. And we could even call it the mind of God. So there's really not a corner of the cosmos that's not being observed or occupied by some form of life, microscopic life at least. And so when we die or when we have a near-death experience, all this genetic information, it gets transferred horizontally from within our body to the exterior of our body, which is a larger form of consciousness. Like the Gaia theory, the theory of that the Earth itself is a living organism. Anyway, I don't want to dwell too much on this because unless you've experienced it, it's just a lot of words, I would say. But yeah, I had this happen to me when I was a teenager, and it had a pretty big effect on my life because I was convinced that I had died and somehow returned to life again. Of course, all of my friends thought I was a bit crazy. My parents even took me to doctors and, analysts and things like this to try and convinced me that that I hadn't died. And, you know, they put me on medication and all kinds of therapies and whatever to try and make me forget. But this is something you can't forget. It's like being kind of pulled right out of your clothing, so to speak. Anyway, many years later, when I was a student, I came to Greece and I started working as a commercial photographer, doing advertising and fashion photography. During that time, there was a dictatorship in Greece, a dictatorship of colonels. They called it the junta. But on one particular day, about, I don't know, millions of people just went out into the streets and started protesting. And there were so many people that there was nothing that the police could do, nothing the military could do. Just millions of people came out into the streets. And that was the end of the dictatorship. That was the fall of the junta. And I was, by accident, I was there when it happened. I was at the Polytechnic University. I was in the middle of everything. I even got beat up by the police. And I wanted to leave Athens to get away from this stressful situation. So one day I decided to just get on a boat and go to the islands. I came to an island called Mykonos. This was in the springtime, April. It was 1974. I just wanted to get away from all the trouble and the rioting that was going on in Athens. So I arrived in Mykonos. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's a beautiful island. All the buildings are whitewashed. They look like giant marshmallows. And I rented a little room somewhere near windmills. I left my suitcase in the room and, I just went out for a walk. And when I decided to go back to my room, I realized that I couldn't remember where it was. All the buildings looked the same. And they all were white with blue doors and windows. So I couldn't find my room, and I kept walking through the streets hoping I would bump into someone that could show me where my room was. The landlord, this little old man with a mustache, rented it to me. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to find anyone, so I just spent a few days walking around. It was about 2 or 3 days that I couldn't find my room. I had the key in my pocket. It was an old skeleton key. But I just didn't know where my room was. So I just had to wait until someone found me. So I kept pacing through the streets of Mykonos, and it's a beautiful island. It has a nice harbor and beaches. And around the third day, 6 o'clock in the morning, I walked towards the waterfront, and I noticed that there was a man standing by the harbor. But there was something very unusual about him, because he was very well dressed, and this is not the sort of thing that goes on the islands. People dress casually, and it's like jeans and cut-off sort of thing. But this guy was very well dressed, like he was going to some formal thing, or even a wedding, I thought. And he was just pacing up and down by himself, looking into the sea. So I sat down at a outdoor cafe that had not opened yet because it was still too early. And because I was tired, and I figured I'll just rest a little bit and wait for the sun to rise. And where I sat, there was a metal seal, like a plate, a plaque, right in the ground. It was next to my feet. And I looked at it for a while, and I noticed that it resembled the design of an atom. It had the nucleus and an electron, and all this kind of engraved into the design of this metal seal, which was the seal of a well system, because Mykonos at that time didn't have the public water that we have in America. Most of the water came from wells, and these wells are quite ancient, actually. And as I was looking at this object, this man who was pacing up and down on the harbor, he suddenly turned and looked at me and started walking towards me. And I could hear him say, "Do you see it? Catch the universe." And I thought, wow, that's, pretty strange. I'm looking at this object that looks like an atom or something, and here's this guy telling me that it's a symbol of the universe. Of course, I thought, I'm tired, I haven't slept, it must be just my imagination. And I tried to get up and walk away, but this person would not let me walk away. He stretched out both his hands with his fingers extended in my direction, so, telling me, stay right where you are. And for a moment I got scared. I thought, well, maybe I am in danger. Who knows who this person is or what he wants. And I noticed that by then the sun had come up over the sea, but there was a thick black line or a rectangular object that blocked out part of the sun. And it was huge. Whatever this thing was, it must have been like, one of these mile-wide UFOs that people talk about. And I froze. I didn't know what to think. I had never seen anything like that before in my life. It seemed that this person, who was dressed in black, very formally, the man in black sort of thing, it seemed that he was somehow connected with the anomaly in the sky, this object, and the seal that was right next to me where I sat. Now, this happened to me in 1974. This person, he just kind of walked by my chair. He told me some other things, telepathically, I would assume, because I never spoke to him. I didn't know who he was. But he knew my name, it seemed, because I heard him say, "Peter, will you look at me?" And when I heard him call me by my name, I looked at this guy, and I could see his forehead. I mean, he had kind of squinted, and he was tensing his body. And I heard him say, "Do you know what I must do?" And I saw this steam vapor swirling around his forehead. And I heard the blast of a ship's horn, like a loud trumpet. But I didn't see any ships in the harbor. And then when I realized, what is going on, I just kind of passively surrendered to this guy. I mean, I wasn't going to go out and challenge him or try and, confront him in any way. And then I heard him say, "Know the faith." And then he just walked past me and disappeared into the side streets of the island, and I never saw him again. The strange thing is, though, that when I looked at the metal object again, the nucleus was broken. There was a small metal rod that had been broken, and I assumed that he did it. I have no other explanation for it. So anyway, this happened to me. I went around telling people about it. Some people thought maybe, maybe it has something to do with an alien, a close encounter, or other people thought I was just making it up. But, why would I make up such a story about well seals and things like this? And for years I've been trying to figure it out, and I've made quite a lot of progress. I have a website where I discuss all these things. It's called myth-os.com. You can find it on the internet. And, yeah, well, I just believe now that there is some sort of alien presence, because that's the only way that I can accept it. I believe in science. I'm not too much into the supernatural. When things that happen that I can't explain, I always try to find some sort of scientific, as crazy as it may seem, I think there has to be some logical explanation. You can't just convince me that, spooks will come out of the woodwork. And years later, though, another thing happened. This ties in with, you may have seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. Well, I got somewhat involved with that, too. It was part of the U.S. Navy, and Stanford University had done a lot of research into this sort of parapsychology, the ability to control matter with the mind. During those days, I had returned to America. I was living again in Ohio. This was in the late 70s. And I kept having a series of dreams, recurring dreams that were like nightmares, where I would see myself tied to a chair in some dark experimental place that it seemed like a wartime situation, maybe something that could have happened during the Second World War or something like that. But I was being experimented on, tied to a chair, and they were doing some sort of nuclear experiments. I couldn't, of course it was just a series of dreams, but it seemed like they were doing experiments on human beings in type of a nuclear reactor. And again, I thought, well, these are just my dreams. There's, people dream all sorts of things. There's nothing to worry about here. So I forgot it for a while. And then I came back again to Europe, back to Athens. And I met some other people that were also involved in advertising and fashion and things like this. And I met a guy named Tom. He was from, I think he was from Chicago or Milwaukee, somewhere like this. But he was a concert promoter. Back in the States, he had promoted a few concerts with Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, and, this during the 70s. And now, when I met him again in Athens, he was organizing a concert with Dizzy Gillespie, the famous jazz trumpet. And I was part of his team, so to speak. We were trying to organize the concert. It was going to be held at the Athens Hilton Hotel. And I had a basement apartment that it was right across the street from the British Consul in Athens. It was like a double basement. You had to walk down the cellar, and then there were another set of steps where you could go down even more. And it was like a dingy little apartment, but it was cheap. One day while I was cleaning, I discovered on one of the walls that there was a very large canvas covering the wall. So I pulled the canvas off the wall, and I saw a large metal door. It looked like the door of a submarine. And I thought, wow, I've never seen anything like this before. A metal door in my apartment. So I told my friend Tom and another friend of mine. They came and they helped me to open this door because we had to remove part of the floorboards. The door would not open unless you removed part of the floor. It was a wooden floor, but it had a section that you could lift out. And then, only then would the door open. There was like 1 or 2 steps down, and then you would go through the door. And of course, while we were tearing the floor apart, we were thinking, well, maybe we'll find treasure or gold or something like this. And when we finally opened the door, we went inside, and there was no light. We had, lighters and things like this. And we discovered it was a bunker, a bomb shelter that had been built there into this building. And right in the middle of the bunker was a wooden chair. And it looked exactly like the chair that I kept seeing in my dreams a few years before. And boy, that really got to me because the chair had a hole in its seat as if someone had been tortured in that spot. And there was a bloody mattress on the floor right next to the chair. So we were careful not to touch anything, because who knows, maybe it was contaminated or something, and we didn't want to destroy any evidence either. But this happened during the middle of a concert, right? Dizzy Gillespie, his band, we had to go to the Hilton and show them around, and it was very difficult because we had gone through this traumatic experience of finding a torture chamber. And, Dizzy's band knows all about it. We couldn't keep it a secret. And Dizzy himself, too, he's passed away now. So, in the meantime, I couldn't live in that place anymore. It felt like it was haunted or something, I just had to get out of there. And the landlady got angry when she found out that I had discovered a bunker in the basement. She sent the janitor to tell me that I would be evicted because I didn't have a lease and things like this. So I got to, I was concerned that maybe all this evidence would be destroyed. And I wanted to photograph everything I could. But I didn't have much money in those days. I remember I went out one night and I was just kind of wandering about in a daze through the streets of Koloniki Square. And I ran into 2 people just by chance that happened to be friends of Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen is he's Canadian. He's a famous songwriter and musician, but he's also got a house on the Greek island of Hydra. And it turns out these 2 people had just returned to Athens after visiting Leonard Cohen. One of them was an elderly man who was an artist, a Canadian artist. I think his name was either Paul or Bill or something like that. Paul is what sticks in my mind. And with him he had this lovely young woman who was a fashion model, a black lady from England, because she had a very London accent. I don't know how I just ran into them, and I was so upset about having this torture chamber in my house that I just blurted everything out to them that, hey, there's this and that, and I don't know what to do. And I'd like to photograph it and get the evidence because I'm being thrown out. And just like that, the woman reached into her purse, pulled out a bundle of money and said, okay, here, take this, pay your rent, buy film, do what you have to do. And then they just walked away. That was the only time I ever saw them. I hadn't seen them since. But it bought me some time. So I got film, and I went down there with my cameras and my flashes, and I photographed everything I could in the bunker without touching anything, of course. And finally, I had to leave. I got thrown out. But, of course, people knew about my experience, and it started to spread around, and people were gossiping. I mean, at one point, we even called it the submarine, the yellow submarine, or something like that. And after I got thrown out of there, the people that rented it were part of the Greek National Broadcasting Company. Now that's a coincidence. It was like the anchor news broadcaster and his brother, who was the director of the news. So they were pretty much into current events and politics and things. I mean, they even had contact with the prime minister. So I can't say what happened after I left. What became of all the objects in that room, the chair, the mattress, I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is that I photographed it, and I studied it, and I analyzed it, tried to figure out what happened. It looked pretty much like a torture chamber because there was blood all over the walls. And the chair was like really decrepit. I mean, it was like observing a haunting or something. At one point, one of the owner of one of the largest newspapers in Athens contacted me, and he wanted me to go to his office and to show him the actual photographs, because I guess they wanted to be certain that it was real, that it wasn't just a rumor. So I took the photographs there, I showed them to him, and they're pretty grisly. But for some reason he decided not to publish. You know, he said that this is obviously some kind of torture chamber from the Nazi era, because I also discovered in the corner of the bunker a lot of burnt newspapers. There was a pile of newspapers, and they were all burnt and charred. But I could see on some of the pieces that it was from the 1940s. Articles about the Nazis and the German occupation. So the editor of the newspaper was sure that this was real, but we really didn't have anything to report. I mean, nothing to say except, you know, here's where someone was tortured. And then again, maybe that would give the perpetrators a chance to cover their tracks. So he didn't publish. He wanted to see the evidence, but he kept it a secret. It was classified, in other words. And this was for years. I and my friends knew about it, but no one else. This was up until the 1990s when Gorbachev of the Soviet Union finally introduced his policy of openness, or Glasnost, I think is what they called it. And they released a bunch of information that had been kept secret by the KGB concerning the Nazis and the Germans. And part of that was photographs and even video footage of what supposedly was the suicide of Hitler. Hitler, as you know, committed suicide in a bunker. Later they said, of course, that it wasn't actually Hitler, it was one of Hitler's doubles that they had the photographs of. It turns out that someone that looked like Hitler, who was probably a cook or a chef at the Chancellery, was dressed up and made to look like him, and they shot him and left him for the Allies to discover. Now, the strange thing about this is that parts of the photographs released by the KGB matched parts of my photographs. And this is amazing because these places are around 2,000 kilometers apart, you know. What does Athens, Greece have to do with a bunker in Berlin. But sure enough, there were too many matches in the photographs. The mattress, the corner of the mattress with all the blood on it that I found, it looked like, even the details of the floor, the floor of the bunker matched, little cracks and little specks on the ground, they matched perfectly. So here's where I began to investigate the phenomenon of Hitler's doubles. And I'm finishing a book on that subject right now. It turns out that Hitler had about 5 different people that looked like him, and they played the role of the Führer. And this is not, I'm not making this up. These are facts, and this is why I wrote the book, because people don't know about it. Now, the story of the Hitler's doubles began with a guy by the name of Julius Schreck. Now, Julius Schreck was Hitler's personal bodyguard and his chauffeur. He was the closest officer to Hitler. Schreck actually started the SS before Himmler. Himmler took it over and made it into a cult sort of thing. But it was Schreck who started the SS because it was part of Hitler's bodyguard. And Schreck was Hitler's lookalike. From a distance, you couldn't tell them apart. Okay, so he was the first person that played the role of the Führer. After that was another man by the name of Heinrich Berger. He was a stenographer, and he worked at the Wolflair headquarters. This was in East Prussia. His job was to imitate Hitler. He could speak like Hitler. He could convince all of Hitler's generals that he was Hitler, until Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg put a bomb under the chair of who he thought was Hitler, and he blew off the legs of Heinrich Berger, who died a few hours later. So he was the second doppelganger, the second double. The third double was a man named Gustav Weller. Now, Gustav Weller was a performer. He was like a vaudeville type of character, but he looked exactly like Hitler, and it caused a lot of commotion, and it became a problem for the Gestapo. They arrested Weller a few times because he was not a Nazi sympathizer. He would make fun of the Nazis, and he was pretty well known. And so Hitler's private secretary, Martin Bormann, got Gustav Weller to work as a double in a place called the Berghof, which was Hitler's kind of country house in the Alps. So if you've ever seen some of these home movies that they show of Hitler in his mountain retreat, well, a lot of those scenes are actually of Gustav Weller. Now, what happened to Weller, no one is quite sure. People thought that maybe it was Weller that was the person that they found shot in the Chancellery Garden. But supposedly a surgeon, a British surgeon who had also examined Rudolf Hess, he claimed that Weller was well and alive after the war, that he had been interrogated by the Allies. So we still didn't know who the person was that was shot and left to resemble Hitler. Now, the doctor who did this, by the way, is his name was W. Hugh Thomas. He's written quite a few books, and he's the one who actually pushed the idea that that Hitler and the top-ranking Nazis used doubles and lookalikes. In fact, it's said that Scotland Yard examined Hugh Thomas's theories and has kept it under lock and key. It's for 100 years, none of this information will be released to the public. And then there's another doppelganger that's worth mentioning. A lot of people have heard of him. His name is Aleister Crowley. Now, Crowley, of course, was a Satanist and occultist. He was born in Scotland, and he was a Nazi sympathizer. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot that needs to be explored about Crowley's connection with Nazism, but the fact that he may have been one of Hitler's doubles or lookalikes is, I don't know, I think I'm the only one who's really taking this, making a serious inquiry into that possibility. And of course, Crowley spoke several languages. He had gone to Cambridge University. He even spoke Greek. And, well, my question is this: who was the person that was tortured in that room that I found, in that wooden chair? Or, to put it quite bluntly, what became of the real Adolf Hitler? Did he just disappear after the First World War, before he was famous or known, or, you know, just an obscure person whose identity was stolen? That's possible. A lot of people think the same thing about bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, as you may know, was also more or less a hospital patient. He was on kidney dialysis. You know, I mean, these are facts. His health was very bad. And yet we're told that he was riding a white horse leading leading Al-Qaeda. I mean, you know, you can't have both. Either this guy was sick and he was under medical care, and who was his doctor? Well, the doctor who started Al-Qaeda. What was his name, by the way? You have to be careful who your friends are. And, you know, when they finally found bin Laden in his so-called millionaire mansion, and then inside it was just a pigsty. It was like living in filth. Is, you know, a lot of the pictures revealed. One of bin Laden's wives claimed that they had been kept in that house for years without a telephone, you know, like they were under house arrest. So it's the same sort of thing that I'm trying to get at with my bunker story. Was someone being held hostage, and was identity theft being used to start a war, to start a world war, and then to blame it on this person who had really nothing to do with it. I'm finishing my book. It should be ready in about a month or so. You'll be able to find it on Amazon, and it has illustrations, a lot of photographs, a lot of biometrics where we compare, you know, facial features, especially the ear, the shape of the ear. This is something that is very hard to fake. And yes, Aleister Crowley and the Führer had exactly the same ear. What kind of coincidence? I don't think it is a coincidence. And so today you see that democracy is kind of fading away. You know, it's not growing, it's diminishing, and what we have is the growth of corporate fascism instead. And this is the New World Order, I don't know. This is basically what I'm involved in right now, trying to finish this book. And I also write things about the unexplained, like the experience that I had with the metal seal and the near-death things like this. But like I said, I believe in science. I think there's a logical explanation to everything. And, you know, we're just a small particle, a small speck in the cosmos, and there has to be a reason for this universe. It's just not here without a reason. Because if you say, well, there's no reason for existence, it's the same as saying that there's no logic to it, but there is logic. There is formal logic. We call it mathematics, and we can find it all through the universe. Yeah, it's all governed by mathematics. And, well, I don't know. I think I've said enough for now, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer you.
This wraps up episode 2 of Starfire Wolflair on the Dark Matter Radio Network. I hope you enjoyed the show. We're going to be changing, growing, getting more energetic week by week. As you can see, our team keeps changing. I think everybody did a good job today. Everybody is learning on the fly. But the most important thing is we hope we bring you content. We are learning all of our tools. Wayne Piscina, a musician by profession, is also getting his music degree. He's excellent at all the equipment. We're learning how to do all the mixes and stuff. We're being very honest with you. We are becoming full professionals. We are working on it. I have produced other shows, but I have not been an audio person myself. I've written shows, written scripts. I do a lot of research. We each bring something else to this. Leslie's going to come around a lot. You know, she's an excellent researcher. She's done some work with Jerry Pippin in the past, and a lot of you know him. He actually was approached to do Coast to Coast even before Art Bell. Pete is going to come on from Greece. There's some other people you're going to be introduced to in the next coming weeks. Carol Sloan is there. Dale Drinnen, who does wonderful blogs about creature features. Regis is going to come on, and I told you he's going to talk to us a lot more about the information that is vitally important about fighting chemtrails and all the chemicals that we need to combat, as far as like the damage that these things are doing to our not only our health, but also our own equipment and everything else. He's going to help with that, and we're going to have a whole episode about that, because chemtrails, it's just such a vitally important thing now. It's tied to that Morgan's disease, and it's tied to what's happening to our water. Of course, the acid rain has been around for a long time. But the chemtrails are deliberate. Everybody admits that there's weather wars. They're trying to change the weather. But I think it's also tied to, just like adding fluoride to the water, is that they're actually trying to dumb down people. And there is a little depopulation. I know some people don't want to hear about that, but there really is an Agenda 21, and it's a bit frightening. You don't need aliens for that. You can just have some very dangerous human beings for that. But anyway, I wanted to stop in before we conclude the show and say thank you again to Keith Rowland for being patient with us. I also want to thank you, the audience, for being patient with us. I ask, if you enjoy the show, to please listen. Archives will be up on YouTube and Podomatic, and also on all of our Facebook page. They'll be on Leslie's page, they'll be on mine, they'll be on Carol Sloan's page, they'll be on Dale's page, they'll be on Dana's page. So they will be available. I'm also going to ultimately upload them to Facebook, on my Facebook page, and the Starfire Wolflair page. So you will be able to find the repeats. And I know Keith has been replaying shows, at random. So every once in a while, just turn on the Dark Matter Radio Network, because you're going to hear a lot of great shows. There's a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting alternative radio out there, and this has been awesome that this is available. And if you think you want this or that, so you can turn on at a specific time when you see the schedule. But he has been putting things up out of schedule just to let you hear replays. So if you're not doing anything else and you just want to listen, you need something in the background, go ahead and turn on Dark Matter Radio Network and hear what's new, what's changing. Maybe a new show is on. Maybe a replay of one you hadn't caught before or one you didn't think you'd want to catch. Because I think you're going to hear a lot of interesting things. And I think that what real radio needs is more competition, and that we all need to compete, though, but in a healthy competition. None of us have to tear each other down. We're going to work together. I think that is what we need. There used to be something in St. Louis called At Your Service on the CBS network with Bob Hardy and Rex Davis, and it was an incredible music, but more importantly, incredible news shows. They would call up from generals during Vietnam and talk to them directly. They would sit there and call senators and congressmen and ask them online. That's back when, they actually believed they had to answer. And they had to talk to the people and not just read teleprompters. And that's what I grew up listening to. And, we need to get more of that. And I think the shows, we need to, complement each other. I think we need, and that's fine if even we're on against each other sometimes, because, everybody's got a different choice and flavor of what they want at a particular time. And the more, the better. I think we all improve with competition. So I wanted to thank you for stopping by. I think that Pete did an excellent job, and I hope you listened to all of Pete's. I kind of teased him that he starts out so slow, he's so quiet, so soft-spoken, he's such a great author and blogger. But boy, when you start listening to his near-death experience and you start hearing about the Hitler doubles, it's like listening to an audiobook. I think it was incredible, and I think Dana did an excellent job with Leslie. And like I said, Carol's going to be on too, and Dale's going to be on in the future. And, we have other people going to come on. I hope Nick comes on from Type 1 Radio. He does excellent interviews. And I'm going to nod to them again. Type 1 Radio is an excellent thing. I do their shows on Fridays. I should say Fridays, but it's actually Saturday nights, 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock Central Time. It's out of Bristol, England. They do a wonderful thing. They've got everybody from Judy Woods to just the Sync folks and of course, Freeman Fly. And they still do it. They do it every week, and there's a couple other shows on their blog talk. I'm going to have them come on and talk about that. Chrissy will be on McMahon and talk about things. I may be on her show Sunday night, December 8th, for an hour or two. Chrissy will come back here as well. Hopefully Shazid will come on. Hopefully Melty will come on. There are just so many excellent people out there. And we have so many guests lined up. We have Douglas Dietrich going to come on. We have several other authors. We have other people, both from the UFO, the paranormal field, but also alternative history field. Also a great deal of scientists. We're going to have some more about the alternative energy. We have what's considered the father of permaculture going to be coming on, so we can talk about that. And I do want to mention again, please go out and try to think about the holiday gifts you're going to give. Please consider giving things locally. Please try to think about things organic, things that are healthy. Give documentaries, give books. And please think about that. That is what's important, is that we actually do wake people up and we find solutions. So once again, this is the Starfire Wolflair. It's a great team. It's a team that's getting bigger and a team that's full of energy. And we want to thank you for joining us today. And have a wonderful week. And we hope you listen to the very next show, which will have part 2 with Lars. And we'll also have more with Leslie about her book. And we have a whole new set of guests as well. So please come back and help us howl at the news.